And I work as a senior advisor in the strategy team at AIIB. And the title of our discussion today is Build Infrastructure for Tomorrow Through Technology, Innovation, and Application. Sometimes I feel that there are two worlds out there that have trouble intersecting. The traditional infrastructure world on one side and the new tech world on the other side. On one side, there is energy, transport, water, and its financing instruments. To be honest, they've been more or less the same for the past 30 years. And on the other side, there is this new world that is growing very fast with new ways of working, new financing tools, and new energy. And what we want to explore today is this intersection between these two worlds. And what we want to do is to use it as a cursor, the discussion use it as a cursor on the issue of infrastructure adoption and scaling up to meet the critical challenges that we're all facing as a globe, including on climate change. At AIIB, we think that multilateral banks need to not only help increase productivity, but indirectly or directly address critical issues associated with climate change. It could have a critical and positive social impact as well. That said, it is not the traditional type of activities that multilateral banks finance. While we have seen the rate of infratech adoption in traditional infrastructure increase, it would be a stretch to assert that multilateral banks are dealing with this issue easily. So what we want to do in this panel discussion is expose you to the experience of these four very successful panel members and understand how infratech is transforming traditional infrastructure, how we can foster its discovery, how we can accelerate its adoption, and how we can scale it. And we also want to talk about the risks that infratech carries. To structure the discussion, we have these four distinguished panel speakers to join us. So let me start by introductions, and then we will go to the panel discussion. First, we have Pak Dharma Setiawan from Pak Aditya from PLN. Aditya is basically the EVP of Corporate Transformation at PLN. He used to be a policy advisor in the presidential team, and he's an engineer by training. Unfortunately, we could not have the CEO come and speak with us today, and I know he sent us his apologies, and we're very lucky to have you, Aditya, to speak on his behalf, on behalf of PLN. Then we have Young Won Jin, the CEO of Fluence Asia. Fluence is a US-Israeli firm that designs and implements innovative water treatment solutions. Wang Jin has served as the CEO of Fluence Asia for many years and also serves as the vice president of Fluence Corporation. He has successfully introduced an important wastewater treatment innovation in 2017, and from that basically has expanded very aggressively and massively in the East Asian markets. Prior to joining Fluence, Wang Jin worked for Oracle System, Honeywell, Assa Abloy. Paul Lam is well known to the AIIB audience, since prior to joining Too Simple, Paul was a strategy and policy officer at AIIB, the team that I work in. And he's the one who came up with the idea of the infratech platform that we will later discover in this session. Paul has worked as an investment professional for the IFC, UBS, and British International Investment, so comes with a heavy investment background. And then we have our own Tsewe Liao. Tsewe is a senior investment operations specialist at AIIB, where she leads infrastructure projects in South and Southeast Asia. Prior to working with AIIB, Tsewe worked as an investment professional for several Chinese and American financial institutions, including the Silk Road Fund, Fosun International, American Securities, Lakeside Energy. So let us dive right in at this stage. Aditya, when I met with your CEO yesterday,
and has done. Well, so our system right now is much more reliable, and we already and also it gives us a strong foundation that will make us ready for the next challenge, which is climate change and energy transition. However, I believe energy transition and climate change is a much more complex challenge even for us. Our CEO always said that we need to ensure that the future of our generation is better than ours. And we're trying to utilize everything at our armament to achieve that. How we walk the talk. We already removed 13 gigawatt of coal from the planning phase. We are also replacing 1.1 gigawatt of coal with renewable energy. We are replacing the 800 megawatt of coals with gas. And there are also 1.4 gigawatt coal power plant with, which already have PPA, power purchase agreement. We negotiate and we successfully cancel them. And we also redesigned our national electricity planning as the most, as the greenest and the most cleanest in the history of PLN Indonesia, with 52% of additional capacity for the next 6 years comes from renewable energy. Is it enough? Of course, it's not enough. We built more ambitious, more aggressive scenario of energy transition. With accelerated renewable energy development, we will add the additional. There's two challenges that I think the technology will comes handy in for this case. The first challenge is a mismatch between epicentrum of our potential renewable energy source in Sumatra, Kalimantan, and Sulawesi. And also there's a mismatch between the source and the demand, which is in the Java Island. So we will build the green enabling transmission lines to evacuate those green electrons from the location of the supply to the location of the demand. We are harnessing untapped potential. Therefore, we will add from 22 gigawatt in the planning to become 62 gigawatt for the next 15 years. And it will also become the foundation for the ASEAN supergrid. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. With the variable renewable energy, we have a huge challenge of intermittency. Therefore, we need to build smart grid and also flexible generation to solve that challenge. Yes, and therefore the variable renewable energy we will expand. Before it was only 5 gigawatt for the next 15 years. Right now we plan to build 28 gigawatt of variable renewable energy. In the past, energy transition is very challenging for us, and I think with the right technology and right core competency, we are building new core competency at our company. We try to embrace this challenge and turn it to become a new opportunity, a huge opportunity for Indonesia, for PLN and for Indonesia. Not only for PLN, I think it will give a huge boost of growth, green growth for Indonesia. That's why I think the mindset is changing. Before, we are only an electricity supplier. We are only electricity and utility company. However, for the next, right now and also for the future, PLN already become what you call climate action company, and we are ready to give the future generation a better environment, a better future than us. Maybe. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pak Aditya. There is one thing that I just want to probe a little bit and to push you a little bit on, which is, I mean, usually when we talk about energy, we always talk about more generation and more distribution, but we never talk about the waste that we have, right? And I'd like to put the finger on the fact that infratech maybe helps also actually contain or reduce that waste and distribute better and access more people and therefore be more socially inclusive. Can you say a few words on that very quickly?
Yes, we also have an initiative right now. We try to recycle a waste, a city waste, to become what is it? Residual fuel derived or something like that. What we call in Indonesia BBGP, bahan bakar jemputan padat. So we try to recycle and solve the city problem for waste and give it to the what is it? To the coal power plant to reduce the usage of our coal as a mix. And we try to elevate this and we try to push this. So maybe in the future we will have a biomass power plant, something like that. But I think waste is also a huge problem for us. So we are also electricity company. That's why I think it will solve two of them. But I think that's my view on it.
Thanks a lot. Yes, I mean, what really I wanted to hear, and I think that's what you said, is that technology can really help actually control a few things. And it's helping not only through the transition of your company into a climate action company, to take the words of your CEO, but also in containing what you do today and be more efficient. Let's move on, but still stay on the topic of climate change, because I was really struck, Wang Jin, when we first met about the technology that you're disseminating and scaling up in East Asia, and also the impact it can have. So can you tell us more about it? And what I'm really interested in asking you this question is, how does technology get scaled up? Because you're going through that with your firm. And is it, when you're doing this, of course you want to have the patent to it, you have the control of it so that you can be more commercially viable. But is it something that actually can jump from one firm to the other? And how do you see competition coming up next to you and developing these systems?
Well, thank you for the question, Yvonne. And also, I'd like to thank the Egyptian government and AIIB for having me here and hosting this excellent event. Coming back to the question, well, first of all, Fluence Corporation, we are in the small to medium-sized, decentralized water space, providing waste management solutions. And of course, we do have our core technology, specifically in the municipal wastewater treatment system, which is popularly known as MABR, membrane biofilm aerated reactor, all right? So this, on the onset, may seem to be a proprietary technology, but actually in the world, there are other companies that provide this technology. So the question in terms of what benefits and what does it bring to the table in terms of with reference to COP27 or even ESG requirements, and in terms of scaling up, I would say that we do the usual energy consumption and energy savings, process efficiency, high effluent. But one of the areas that we do very well is in water reuse. And in the water reuse space, it's basically taking wastewater, and here I'm talking about sewage effluent. That means sewage water that has been processed and is discharged to the environment, but not specifically for drinking, but more for industrial applications. So we do have good success stories in terms of scaling up, in terms of combining the different types of technology. So on the front end, we have what we call the sewage wastewater treatment technologies, and in the middle part, we have the normal ultrafiltration reverse osmosis technology, and the output of this whole process train is actually ultra pure water. And as we all know here, ultra pure water is being used for very high-tech industries like the semiconductors, right? So in terms of scalability, in terms of contributing to be a portion or a part of a bigger solution, that's where Fluence steps in the sense that we contribute the technology that actually enables a much bigger picture in terms of resource recycling, resource management, and of course resource production as well. So in that story, and basically I would like to share this particular story, which I already said just now. It comes from Greater China. All right, we have a project where the city government, the local city government, when they are looking to build a semiconductor factory, it is not a straightforward infrastructure investment into the factory, because a semiconductor factory requires water, ready source and reliable source of water. So if that area is lacking in water, so the next consideration is, if I were to use sewage effluent as my water source, all right, that means I have to consider city planning. I need to talk about urbanization. I need to consider what is the population growth rate of this particular area. And if there is no population, I have to start from scratch. So we are talking about city planning, incorporating industries, incorporating water technologies, combining all together. And here, it is the technology that is the fundamental enabler of this whole picture in terms of investment.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, a fantastic application actually that helps solve other issues in other infrastructure sectors. And when we talk about, you know, hybrid infrastructure, this is really what comes up, and it is so difficult to urban planning. The one thing that I'm struggling with, to be honest, is, so you're part of a larger corporation, and that larger corporation basically does more things than this product. So you have a product, you're commercializing it, you're expanding it. What I'm interested in is, how do you, as a larger corporation, how do you actually acquire new processes, new systems, new tech? How do you expand that? What's the process that leads you to that? And the reason why I'm asking that is, of course, as financiers, what we think about, you know, technology, you know, being scaled up and disseminated. And that's the whole purpose of the Infratech platform that we will talk about later. So how does it work within your own firm, this process?
Okay, we do have, in Fluence Corporation, we do have straight off open technologies, which is UF and RO. That's mainly used for the desalination requirements. All right, specifically in Egypt itself, we have New Mansoura, a 40,000 plus 40,000 cubic meter plant. Even in Sharm, we actually have a 10,000 drinking water plant here, using very traditional open technologies, which is a combination of ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis. All right, and we are taking water from the well, we are taking water from the Red Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. Now, we also have the new technologies, which is MABR. Now, this is specifically for sewage. And in the technology space, whenever you have new technology, the challenge is always convincing end users, local governments, banks, to have that confidence, because I guess everybody have their own internal processes. I mean, the approval processes will definitely ask for one requirement: references, all right? And the depth of that reference requirement can vary from one country to another country. So the challenge of rolling out new technologies is really this block. I wouldn't say it's a technology block. It's a mental block. It's a process block. And this is what I faced when I started pushing out this MABR in 2017. And I did it in China, PRC. And believe me, it was not easy, all right? And part of the process, I mean, there is actually a process for rolling out new technologies. And I've kind of figured it out over the last 6 years. First thing you need to do is get a sponsor, all right? Someone who believes in you, not the technology, believes in you, all right? And of course, you have to have that commitment to support that belief. But most importantly, we need to do a pilot plan, all right? And a pilot plan, from our perspective, commercialization of a product cannot take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, all right? So a pilot plan, we have to be very practical here, 3 to 6 months, and that's it. We prove it, and then we can start rolling out. But it's easier said than done.
I think you've said exactly what we were hoping to hear, basically. I mean, I think there is a role for financiers, intermediaries, but it's certainly governments also in trying to understand what's happening there, and a role for products that actually are boasting the name of the technology, or at least the knowledge of it. Let's move to the transport sector. Paul, it seems to me that the transport sector has been stuck in a very traditional way, in the old type of transport sector that we used to know from before, from when I was born, basically, to what it is today, which is, bringing in new technology. We talk about driverless cars, we talk about GPS, we talk about all of these things that are totally changing the transport sector. And yet, to some extent, it seems to be caught in between these two worlds, the old world and the new world. Can you share with us what the vision of the future transport sector is for Too Simple, your firm? Do you think that actually driverless tech is the next big thing to disrupt the sector? And what does it mean in terms of evolution of the sector itself when it comes to transportation?
Thank you very much, Ivan. So for Too Simple, just like many other autonomous driving companies, the vision is to help us to get rid of the problem of the shortage of truck drivers, particularly in US, that there are 80,000 to 100,000 drivers shortage every year. So for autonomous driving, that is not new, actually, in some way, because for transportation, we have to remember what is the fundamental value of it is to transport goods, services, and passengers from point A to point B. So although this is a traditional sector, we're always serving a purpose and an outcome. That the driverless vehicles are not here to disrupt that. We're not trying to make mobility anything different from transporting people, goods, services from point A to point B. We're not disrupting that. What we're really trying to solve is that when we have new problems, just like 100 years ago when we were still riding horses with wagons, through mechanizations we moved into cars, but today when we have less and less drivers who are willing to go into driving trucks for 14 days from one state to another, that young people would like to proceed into another type of lifestyles, that becomes an economic and social problem. That today we have a lot of states in US as well as a lot of municipals in China that are not necessarily getting the full benefits of e-commerce. And the reasons for that is not because any of the e-commerce platform do not reach them, but the fact that logistics cost is high because not many drivers would like to operate those routes. And with them isn't different. And this is something that I would like to share. I agree with Jin Yong a lot. There's a mentality problem. And that mentality problem is not just from the infrastructure sector who doesn't think new, but also a mentality problem of the technology people that don't think of yesterday. In the end of the day, all we want is to transport things efficiently from A to B. So it is really important that the technology people also think about autonomous driving as a means to an end and trying to use it properly in things that serves the purpose of tomorrow. I will not comment on any other of the business models, but I will invite everyone to imagine, is it more often that we think about autonomous driving these days? If you are picking up a newspaper in Silicon Valley, would you see more often autonomous driving as a word related to robotaxi, pizza delivery, selling stuff? How often have you heard using autonomous driving in airport for the shuttle buses, in port for the cranes, or Class 8 trucks, big trucks, really becoming the mainstream logistics? I would guess many of you would probably heard more on the taxis, on the pizza delivery, on the no-man delivery, and less often do you hear autonomous driving technology companies in the Silicon Valley or in a major tech hub to think about the civil problems. So I guess that would be my response, and also just echoing what Jin Yong said. There's a mentality problem that the transportation, the future of transportation should be exactly the same as the yesterday of transportation, but more efficient, more sustainable, and more inclusive.
Thank you, Paul. Let me ask you the same question, the same follow-up question as I did to Wang Jin. In your experience as a tech entrepreneur, I mean, your firm is listed on NASDAQ. In your experience, what are the main barriers to scale up and dissemination at this stage? Because of course we've heard about all of what you said before. It's been there for a long, long time. And yet there's an issue of scaling up clearly, of dissemination as well. So what are the main barriers?
Sure. So the company, as a couple of other leaders, have already come across the technical challenges. So if you go to YouTube, you can actually find trucks with no man in it and actually is driving 70 miles on a highway in Arizona. So from a technology perspective, it's real and it's already on YouTube. Everybody can see it. But when it comes to commercialization, it becomes a different problem. Many of us probably have got our driver licenses as well. Driving in a car park or in the same test route is one thing, but when you are driving in different places and actually driving under a demand, for example, you're delivering something really important to others, it becomes a different thing. How do you drive more consistently and also reliably at a scalable fashion? Now for that requires partnerships, and most importantly, for autonomous driving companies, we're basically just helping, assisting, and to be as good as human drivers. But as good as a human drivers, you still need to deal with buying a car, getting a car mortgage, buying insurances yourselves, and also you probably would need to also have Google Map. And last but not least, if the roads were not built appropriately, then it's also very hard for drivers to drive. So the point that I want to get to in terms of scalability and commercialization is that there needs to be partnerships and collaborations with insurance companies, with the government. In US, it will be with the DMV, and also with a lot of civil engineers who think about how the roads are built. And let me just pause with one example and close. In Texas, for example, there are many road signs that are different, and they are meant to be different. So if you drive to a construction site in Texas, you don't actually get a sign saying this is a construction site. And there's actually a very funny sign sometimes like zombie ahead, no man's zone. They're trying to be hilarious and they're trying to be humorous. That is not something that is very favorable to an autonomous driving company. Because for autonomous driving company, what we want is road signs that are easily understandable and that is also very standard. So that just gives you one way for us to make autonomous driving better. It's not just about developing a better technologies, but it's also about working with the government, working with the truck manufacturers like the Daimler, like the Volvo, to tone down the difficulty and the complexity of the game. We can spend 1,000 or 10,000 hours to use AI to solve the most difficult game, but we should take a pause and ask the technology companies to work with the business people and the government people. Let's make the very complex game to a tic-tac-toe first. Then we can use AI and use technology to solve it in 3 minutes. That needs to come in, and that's why partnership is really important. And technology companies have a big vision and very good at actioning, making a change. Well, it's always good to take a pause, think about what worked yesterday and listen to the others. Because in the end of the day, the technology is going to make the future of transportation just like yesterday, but more efficient. So it's important to take this total stakeholder approach.
Thank you, Paul. There's one word you did not say, and I'm really disappointed, actually. I was hoping you would talk about regulation. I mean, a lot of barriers that you're talking about are about regulations. And certainly that's why your firm is based in Arizona and not in California today. And that's also why autonomous driving has not been adopted. But we'll come back to that in the discussion because I think regulation is a big part of the problem for us. And as an MDB, maybe we have a role there. So now let's change gear a little bit. Let's shift gears. I mean, you've been involved with financing infrastructure for a long time, and you've gone through all of the cycle of basically the financing from private equity to MDB financing. So you've seen basically the barriers from within. So how difficult is it to actually finance infratech or technology within infrastructure? How difficult is that, and how does it work?
Thank you very much, Ivan, for that question. Actually, I originally thought of saving the answer to the last of the panel because I think that's the whole reason that we initiated this seminar is that we would like to, hear from our clients what the kind of challenges they're facing when they are obtaining financing for their technology. With no matter what stage they are, whether they are basically technology innovator or there is a traditional infrastructure company looking to apply some kind of a new infrastructure technology that probably haven't have a much proven track record. So now I'm kind of switching kind of my order of thinking a little bit to answer your question first. Indeed, I personally had the luck to be at the different side of the financing game, both at equity and also project financing and corporate financing. So in the current world, the challenge I was thinking we're facing is a disconnect that existing in the financing of infrastructure technology is that this early stage of technology financing is primarily done by venture capital, by some kind of a special arm of certain corporations or even by some research institution. And they can only bring the technology up to certain stage. And then the end, when it starts to roll out, typically, especially for those technology that's used in infrastructure sector, it requires very heavy, intensive capital investment. And that time is not proper for venture capital to continue. There must be someone, who take on and continue the development of financing process. So then on the other side, you have a traditional financiers institution like banks. They are used to do more kind of a lower risk project with proven technology, with infrastructure assets has a very kind of long track record for them to providing a large amount of financing to enable the infrastructure investment. So what is living in between these two ends is something I think right now is missing. We do see some of the companies, especially the manufacturing companies, are trying to meeting up the gap by financing with their balance sheet. Like for example, we're talking to a solar panel producer who has been investing tremendously their own money to improve the basically the conversion rate, to lower the production cost, but they cannot get it from alternate sources. They have to use their own balance sheet to obtain such kind of financing. And I think that's an area really kind of left for us as MDB, as kind of financial institutions are willing to enable technology in infrastructure and capable of taking a little more risk in the investment an early stage of development to find out a solution, or at least initiate a kind of broader brainstorming or discussion to find out what could be a proper kind of a way or mechanism to bridging these two stages of technology and infrastructure so that they really can be applied in the way that we hope and also be scaled up in the way we want to leave no one behind. And that's, I hope after these discussions that we can also hear a little more kind of a thought from the speakers, and then I can, have a response later.
Well, we'll see about that. But let me let me push you on something that I think is very thought-provoking. So you're mentioning basically proven technology, right? Which is financed kind of traditionally by commercial banks. Already for me, and as you know, I've been in this world of the MDBs for quite a while. For me, there's a question about the ability of an MDB to finance proven technology, because it's technology. It's not something that MDBs have traditionally done. So now you're trying to stretch the limit there. That means, for me, a DNA of an MDB, of a multilateral bank, that would be different. That must be AIIB, of course. But please explain that to us. I mean, is it possible in your mind? You're a banker, that's what you do. So is it possible? Can we do that? And can we push the limit and actually lead the other MDBs in that, and moving them away from the more traditional type of infrastructure lending to more adventurous infratech type of lending?
Thank you. I think I have to answer your question first in a simple, straight way. Yes, of course, this can be done. I think in the finance world, it's all about structuring, de-risking. As long as we put enough sources in, we should be able to come up with a solution. That's why we exist. I think AIIB, as a first central bank, we had the technology embedded in our gene, no one else. And we are so far, even young, but small, but we have the capacity, another side to look at it. We have the ability to really adopting new things quickly, because we are young, because we are small. And we have this technology-enabled infra in one of our 4 priority themes, shows the commitment we have. So, and of course, I don't need to repeat how important the technology is nowadays to infrastructure, to sustainability development, and to social impact. So we definitely have the full kind of incentive. And then come down more kind of realistic is what kind of actions we need to take. So what the things that are still kind of missing maybe in this whole challenging problems we're facing. You ask about the regulation. Yes, from the technology perspective, a lot of times when it's new to financiers, it's new to regulators as well. Especially some of the technologies involves data securities, involves a lot of potential other versus the social impact. It would make regulators a little kind of more concerned. And also, it's because it's new, and how to regulate it, how to make it really kind of workable for people to do innovation, but at the same time, minimizing the worst, the adverse impact. So AIIB, as a multilateral development bank, we have a natural kind of advantage because we have all its members being our stakeholder. So we can engage with them. We can have starting with knowledge sharing. We can start to, level the playground, having some members maybe a step further in their regulation, have experience to share with other members, so that, when we are kind of deploying this technology, deploying ideas, it's not only scale up in one country, it's actually scale up globally. And then secondly, talking about de-risking. Of course, there are different vehicles. We can think about, for example, quasi-equity. We can have some preferred convertible shares. We can have some blended financing mechanism that to make certain financing lower cost, so that when technology companies getting into application for commercialization, then they can get that kind of a lower cost of financing to enable that kind of application. So I think I'm not going to be able to exhaust all kind of thoughts, but that also means that, in order to do that, you need to understand the technology well enough to know it, so you have the confidence, like Wong Jing said, to the technology, so you'll be able to providing capital investment into that. Thank you.
Thank you. You've covered a lot of ground there, and I want to park a couple of ideas that we will come back to. There's this issue of regulation that actually came in two of the presentations, and I think I remembered as you were speaking the words of Sri Mulyani earlier, yesterday I think, when she mentioned the role of regulation and the role of MDBs in helping actually solve some of these issues. But we'll park that, and there is also the role of AIIB's role and the role of connecting basically the information through platforms and through portals, and that's why we will showcase the Infratech platform later. But I want to touch on one thing that everybody talks about that we did not really mention today, that is critical. Everybody's talking, except for Paul, of course. I mean, you mentioned artificial intelligence, and I think this is critical. Everybody's talking about this. We all have a vague idea of what it means, or sometimes a more precise idea. How do you deal with this in your own businesses? Because again, for me, the view of AI, from where I sit, is that it's so far away from infrastructure in terms of its concept, in terms of how it evolves, in terms of how it can be applied. So can we go around, each of you basically, I mean, I'm asking all of you what you think about this, whether it has a role in your industry, how you see this develop, AI, and can you harness it? Does it have any negative consequences that you can anticipate already? How do you see this evolve? Thank you.
So, Ivan, this is an interesting topic for me. Well, PLN is only handles a small number of customer. We only serve 90 million customer, not very big one. Well, we record every name of the customer. We record their address. We have their personal data. And also, right now we are implementing smart metering so that we can record their demand profile. We can, so that we can try to serve them more efficiently. And also, we try to personalize and have another means of serving them. And also, the challenge before at the power and utility company is how we predict the demand, because the demand is the only thing that fluctuates. It's before, but right now, with 28 gigawatt extra capacity will comes from variable renewable energy like wind and solar. You know what they say, the sun, it's not always, what is it? Life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? There are sometimes cloud and also every day there will be a midnight where there's no sun. And also wind, it more hard to predict how the behavior of the wind. So therefore, we need to predict the supply also in the future, from right now and in the future. With the penetration of the variable renewable energy, we need to track and predict the weather so that we can predict and balance the supply and demand. That's where artificial intelligence and data science comes handy. We cannot manually calculate whether a solar power PV will shut down because of some cloud, right? That's where artificial intelligence comes handy, and that's what smart grid means, I think. So I think in the future, electricity infrastructure cannot avoid the penetration of the artificial intelligence technology.
Thank you. Wong Jin, I mean, this predictability type of modeling that is used by PLN, for instance, on AI, do you use the same type of technology as well? Do you use the same type of tools on your side?
Hello. Well, in the water industry, we are more of the brick and mortar. kind of business, so we are way behind in terms of AI. Having said that, I think there is a very strong potential for the application of AI in the water industry. And this is very much in the area of what I call validation and verification. However, in order to make this application relevant, it will require a lot of support from banks, from governments. So what exactly am I talking about? Let me take a few steps back. I'm talking about total construct costs. Right now, in the world that we live today, any infrastructure project, total construct cost is basically a financial number. Equipment, labor, land costs, etc. I struggle to find any project that actually incorporates the COP27, the ESG components into a project KPI. Right now, what I see very often is that whenever there's a project out released for tender, companies that participate in this project must have some ESG good news to talk about, all right? But it's a corporate ESG, you know, and I call this greenwashing, all right? It's just information that is made to look good. Now, why not take these ESG and specify it in the project as a deliverable, all right? That means you have ESG deliverables besides the normal deliverables of CAPEX, OPEX, things like that, but you specify ESG deliverables. Now, the challenge is to find a common denominator across the financial, the operational, as well as the environmental and the social related. How are we going to find that common denominator that will stretch across? And I believe that's where the application of AI comes in. Because if you want to do validation, if you want to do verification, you must have a database of information specific to this project, operational data, and it cannot be a snapshot of an instance. It has to be over a period of time. And on top of that, it cannot be specific to one project, because everybody knows when you do validation and verification, it is all about relative benchmarking, which means you must have other projects that you can benchmark your project against so that you can ascertain, are you delivering the correct deliverables? And here, this is where you take a project space from a local, perhaps to a regional and to a global scale. So can you imagine if I can benchmark a wastewater treatment plant in the USA with all the necessary parameters, like this could be a 30-year-old plant, etc., under a certain operating climate, and benchmark that against a wastewater treatment plant in Egypt, one denominator, and then you can actually establish a global standard. But in order to make this work, you need people like AIIB, you need the local government, because we as technology providers are really just a small little player on this big space. But certainly, if the world can come together, which is what's happening with COP27, if the whole idea is how do you translate a policy into a strategy and into something that is tactical down to a project itself. That's the challenge.
The good news is that actually multilateral banks do measure ESG and actually are trying to make it part of the projects that they finance. So AIIB does that for the projects that it finances. So that's the good news. But please do not tell us about financing applications that are written by ChatGPT or this type of things, because then we'll be doubtful about the reliability of the validation process. Paul, how do you see AI actually influencing your own sector of economy? Obviously, I mean, everybody's talking about transport on this, but how do you see that?
Sure. So autonomous driving, obviously, the basis of it is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence plays a big role, obviously, in the driving behavior. You need to sense things, perceive them, make reactions, and do planning and predictions all in the same goal. So that plays a big part. But maybe if we zoom out a little bit for the whole transportation sector, AI plays an important role. But maybe let me just very quickly to say what are the benefits of using AI. It's beneficial when you are dealing with micro decisions. It's beneficial when you are dealing with repetitive decisions, and it's adaptive, meaning that every time when you make the decisions, it is not the best solution, but it will become a better solution. So that's the recursive and iterative decision making. And last but not least, when you need edge decisions being made on the ground. Now, if you have these decisions that needs to be made, AI plays a great role. When you have to make 10,000, 200,000, or even 1 million decisions repetitively, and they are very, very small for each decision itself, and finally, you never make the best decision, but you can only adapt and make better decisions each time, then AI plays greatly compared to human. Where do you find these problems? These problems actually exist in transportation. When should the red light becomes green? That's like 100,000 decisions being made every time at every corner in our cities. And there is no best solution because it's a zero-sum game. Suppose every junction has a car coming in. But you can make better decisions. It's an optimization problem that need to be optimized 1 million times every day until you get better. That's a classic example. And the traffic light actually replaces the policeman in the very ancient time, like, for example, in Beijing, actually 20 years ago, you still have policemen directing. And those type of things are replaced by traffic lights. And the coordination of the traffic lights and also a lot of the transportation network problem optimization can actually be tremendously enabled by AI. So I would just stop there.
Thank you, Paul. So Wei, the question to you about AI is about whether you would finance AI as AIIB.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Actually, before we financing or not, I was just want to say one point is that actually AI is very applicable in financial industry as well. I think, broadly speaking, Goldman Sachs is calling themselves a fintech company instead of bank. For us, MDB, we are still a little bit more kind of a conventional in the sense because we're dealing with project by project, which is very heterogeneous. But still, in a lot of sub areas, especially like ESG, as Wangji mentioned, before AI, you can only do like sampling because you only have some manpower. Do maybe like you do auditing. You can only review maybe 1 out of 10 or 20 cases. But now with AI, you can do a much broader in-depth assessment of the ESG actions. And also with the natural language processing, it adds one more like dimension to what we traditionally only looking at the scorecards. So I just want to kind of, before answer the financing part, I just want to say, we ourselves, as a financial industry, we're very kind of connected or impacted by AI as well. And back to your question about financing, again, I think a different type of capital has its own kind of a strength, has its own kind of a risk-return profile. When AI is at the stage of developing itself, probably not directly suitable for MDB like that. They are much more efficient capital doing that. The reason is that moment, you really need diversification. You need to invest in maybe 10 or 20 similar cases to be successful in one. And that's not the kind of, I would say, best efficient manpower use for MDBs like AIIB. There are other already very established angel capital fund, venture capital fund, they can do that. But then come down to the point when the technology is more matured and to application of the technology. I think that's where AIIBs like MDBs can come in more in terms of financing. Of course, we should be involved or at least understand the early stage. by understanding, like the policy implication, regulatory kind of needs. But then when it comes to financing, it's where normally AI applies to certain kind of project or infrastructure, if that answers. Thank you.
It does, and I think it makes a lot of sense, actually, especially from a risk-taking point of view. But I think it'd be interesting to see a development whereby the multilateral development banks world evolves towards, closer knowledge of technology and be able to be more familiar with it, so that actually can finance more of it. And I think this will be developing as we go. I mean, I think this is probably the first time that the MDBs, like AIIB especially, are making a foray into this area, and I think we need to push the boundary there. So listen, I have one more question for you. We've been dancing around the whole topic of discovery, adoption of technology, dissemination of technology. And we've talked about a few things, and issues that you were facing, such as regulatory type of issues, knowledge of technology and ability to finance something that is proven or not, about the fact that there are other risks maybe associated with it, and also some mentalities that need to change maybe around the whole topic. So the question is a fairly, obvious question, because that's why we're having this seminar today in the annual meetings of AIIB. The question to you is, do you see a role that will grow from MDBs and from AIIB especially, going as in financing this, in making, basically in bridging that gap between more traditional infrastructure and technology? Do you see a role for us there? And yeah, that's an open question basically to you.
Okay. The short answer is, of course, the AIIB will have a very huge role for this matter. I mean, humankind innovates. 5 years ago, we auctioned wind and solar. Solar in 2015 is around 20 cents per kilowatt hour. When today solar is only 5 cents per kilowatt hour. In 2018, the PLN is auctioning wind. It was 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, it's only 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So humankind innovates. And therefore, PLN, when facing with this huge challenge, we think we cannot face this alone. We need to collaborate, be it technological collaboration, regulation, collaboration for better regulation, for the core competencies. For new core competencies, we need also collaboration, and also for AIIB, especially financially, financial collaboration to make this happen. PLN cannot face this alone. We need the government, we need the AIIB, and also globally we need to collaborate. I think that's the thing that I want to say.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear. But I'm not asking to be nice to us. I'm asking actually a real question. Can the MDBs position themselves in that field tomorrow and can be leading there? And I know what you're going to say. Yes, please, Wong Jin.
All right, then I won't be nice to you, AIIB, all right? I think the question is not so much, is there a role for AIIB going into the future? I think the correct question to ask is, what role do you want to be involved in? Because I think AIIB has that capacity financially, geopolitically, and in terms of governance, it is all there. So the question here is, how engaged, how involved does AIIB want to be? And with this particular forum here, we're talking about technology. So I believe AIIB have the means and the capability to actually drive technology change by actually establishing technology standards without being prejudiced in any form of technology. Because if AIIB is able to set the targets in terms of the performance required. So we are not talking about you need to use this particular technology or this particular brand. What AIIB is saying that you need to achieve these targets. And by natural attrition, if these targets are set correctly and at a certain level that requires good technology, reliable technology, all right, then by natural attrition, only strong technologies will persevere. And the survival of the technology will just flow right through, and those that cannot survive will naturally drop off the landscape. So I think AIIB has the means to actually structure this and set an industry standard by establishing the targets. And just now, as I was saying, of course, it's very easy to establish financial targets. All right, that's a no-brainer. All right, straightforward math. But the challenge is to establish subjective targets like COP27, like ESG. How are you going to establish something that is very subjective, but at the same time translate that to a measurable and practical target that is project specific, and that technologies can actually understand that and actually deliver these targets? And of course, coming back to the previous discussion on AI, I think that's a fantastic platform that AIIB can establish as well. And there, it becomes very much an open standard that anybody with the right technology can be a participant in this economy here.
I mean, I think this is really fantastic, because I think it goes back to the original role that MDBs carried for a long time, which was to help regulators set the standards and actually try to protect against the risks that may come from whatever technology or from whatever infrastructure. Paul, what do you think about this? I know you've thought a lot about that question, actually, and you've tried to push the boundaries within AIIB when you were there.
Yeah.
So,
I think a couple things that AIIB can do. I agree with Jin Yong that what role does AIIB as an MDB to play in technology? So for me, there are really three suggestions. I think one is to be an honest broker and connector of anything between the tech world and the infrastructure world. It's very unlikely any people from Silicon Valley coming to Egypt, or vice versa. So that's a real area of innovation and convention that AIIB can play. The second thing is regulatory dialogues. And this is more important than anything else, in my view. So, hoping hitting your buzzword. But I really mean it, because regulating electricity, regulating water, regulated utilities took generations of economists and governments' experiments. We had at least 100 years for governments and economists to build up regulatory economics and regulated WACC in UK and etc. So if countries don't talk to each other, I think a couple economic cycles will teach them the lessons. Technology is different. Probably, I guess for economists, there will be maximum 3 years for people to come up with a regulatory framework. And the only way that you can adapt it and make it better is by changing the same set of regulations. And typically, if you're stick in the game, AIIB can really, and vice versa. If we take hundreds years ago, I'm curious, like, when did solar energy became infrastructure? So I think AIIB becomes a great key opinion leader, not to define everything, but to say, hey, guys, let's marshal some of the technologies and implement it with some infrastructure mindset. I think that would be a great role.
Thank you, Paul. That's quite interesting. Zui, I'm not going to ask you whether AIIB can do it or not, but just a couple, very quickly, because we're running out of time. So,
and suggestions to AIIB, I think it's been really valuable. Of course, I think we have been trying in all these areas you mentioned. Actually, I'm not so surprised, but I'm actually very amazed about most of the demands actually coming more from intellectual level than the money side. So which means that I think the most important step we're taking is taking a step forward, meaning that we don't sit behind and waiting for things to be mature, to be ready to fit our finance standards, but instead we take a step ahead to understand it and influence it and help them to pave the path to a successful application. Thank you.
It's really good, thank you. Music to my ears, and I'm sure to our panelists' ears as well. Please don't go anywhere, just one last thing. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody on the panel. Big round of applause to them, please. It's been a great discussion. We want to conclude, don't go anywhere, please don't go anywhere. We want to conclude with a very quick video that Shehao, who's here, who's going to stand, is going to show you. It's about the Infratech platform that AIIB will officially launch in December 2023. So this is all about what we've been discussing basically this afternoon. So Shehao.
Sound is too low.
Is a key contributor to improving infrastructure, and AIIB has made bringing the advantages of technology to infrastructure one of its core thematic priorities. Infrastructure technologies, or Infratech, can help deliver better quality, efficiency, sustainability, governance, or resilience. Despite the potential, technologies are not being adopted at sufficient scale to realize the potential. There are many challenges hampering Infratech adoption, including awareness and limited proof of value. As a response, AIIB is introducing the Infratech portal. This portal aims to share knowledge on valuable Infratech solutions and brings together those who have Infratech with those who need it. How does it work? For example, let's say you're an energy infrastructure operator. You can use the portal to explore relevant Infratech solutions to improve performance. Learn more about each solution, its benefits, components, information about its adoption challenges,